What was the Civil War in Reconstruction? Well, the Civil War was fought between the North and South United States. It was the bloodiest war ever in American history, resulting in 600,000 Americans dead. And then the Reconstruction was the period of time directly after the Civil War. It was mostly political debates over what would happen to the Union and all of its slaves. Who was Abe Lincoln? Abe Lincoln was the center of both the Civil War and the Reconstruction. He was the President of America during the Civil War and most of the Reconstruction, and also the author of the Emancipation Proclamation. He was against slavery and was a great speaker. In his lifetime, he studied military strategy and tactics, taught himself to be a lawyer, and in 1860 was elected President of the United States. He was considered one of the greatest and smartest Republican presidents of all times. What started the war was that Southern delegates sensed a threat from the newly elected President Abraham Lincoln because he disliked slavery. In 1861, they voted to remove the state of South Carolina from the United States of America. The secession of South Carolina was followed by the secession of 10 more states: Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Alabama, Virginia, North Carolina, Arkansas, and Tennessee. These 11 states formed the Confederacy soon after South Carolina troops fired on the Union arsenal at Fort Sumter on April 12th. Then on April 25th, Union troops captured New Orleans and war was officially declared between the Union and the Confederacy. Congress stated right after that the Union is fighting only to preserve itself and not to abolish slavery. On January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation takes effect throughout the Union. The Union and the Confederacy. 3 million Americans fought in the Civil War. A Civil War soldier probably was a farmer and was equipped with a musket, rifle, or carbine, and he carried around 40 pounds of equipment, consisting of ammunition, a bayonet and scabbard, a canteen for water, a knapsack for a blanket roll, which consisted of a wool blanket and a tent half. Ulysses S. Grant was the Union top general. He attended West Point, and he led the capture of Forts Henry and Donelson in 1861. Then in 1868, after the Civil War, Grant became the 18th President of the United States. James Longstreet was also educated at West Point, where he befriended Ulysses S. Grant, but he became a Confederate Major Cavalry General in late 1861, and then became Robert E. Lee's second best man. Robert E. Lee was one of the best officers in the U.S. Army, but when the Civil War started, he turned down Lincoln's offer to be a Union soldier and became a Confederate general. He too was educated at West Point. The major battles of the Civil War. On April 30th, 1863, Robert E. Lee's army of 57,000 engaged the Army of the Potomac, a Union army consisting mostly of volunteers. The fighting lasted 3 days before the Confederates attacked in force. The commanding officer of the Union Army, Joseph Hooker, decided to withdraw. 3 days after that, on May 6, Hooker finally retreated officially, giving the victory to Robert E. Lee. That battle left 30,000 casualties on both sides. Then, on July 1st, 1863, 75,000 of Robert E. Lee's soldiers clashed with the Union Army of the Potomac again, this time commanded by George Meade at Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. The Union soldiers formed a gigantic defensive line after spotting the Confederacy, and skirmishing battles raged on throughout the day. The next day saw much more fighting, as a gigantic Confederate charge, known as Pickett's Charge, pierced the Union line, but soon failed after the Confederates died of the Union troopers, leaving 6,500 Confederates dead. The battle ended on July 3rd, 1863, leaving 51,000 men dead total, and George Meade as the winner. Down south in Georgia, on September 18th, 1863, 60,000 Confederates ambushed 65,000 Union soldiers, led by William Rosecrans. Braxton Bragg of the Confederate Army forced the Union soldiers to retreat back to Chattanooga in Tennessee. The battle that took place there left 34,000 dead. Once in Tennessee, Ulysses S. Grant's reinforcements crushed Braxton Bragg's army. The end of the war. For about a week after the Peninsula Campaign on Virginia, Robert E. Lee had been running from General Ulysses S. Grant when he finally reached Richmond. After a 10-month siege of the city, the Union Army broke through the city's defenses and forced Lee to retreat again. The Confederates moved along the Appomattox River, with the Union General Philip Sheridan following them to the south. Lee's army had very little supplies, so his army could not run for long. Once Lee arrived at Appomattox, he found that his path was blocked by a different army. On April 6, he surrendered to Grant and ended the war. Reconstruction after the war. In 1864, Reconstruction began, with Louisiana being the state that was readmitted into the Union. Rebuilding and amnesty to its peoples lasted till the end of Reconstruction. It also began in other states as they were readmitted into the Union until December of 1865 when it was declared over. Abraham Lincoln had established some acts during the Civil War, like the Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction. It offers pardon and restoration of property to Confederates who pledge the oath to the Union and agree to emancipation. It was called the 10% Plan because it says that only 10% of former Confederate States voters swear their allegiance to the U.S. before the state can begin the process of readmission into the Union. In response to Lincoln's proposal, Congress passes one itself, named the Wade-Davis Bill. It moves the voter requirement from 10% to a majority of the Confederate States voters. Lincoln does not sign this, so it does not come into effect. In 1865, President Lincoln was assassinated 6 days after the war. So the vice president, a Southern Democrat named Andrew Johnson, becomes president. He restates the Reconstruction process and makes it official, and in December, after all the states readmit into the Union, declares it over.